Hi, today we're going to talk about key dates in a loan agreement. So, in the previous blog post and the video, I discussed the timing in a project finance model and the importance of building flexibility when it comes to timeline in a project finance model. In this video, I want to go back to the topic that I started earlier regarding the term sheet negotiation and how a financial model and a financial modeler can help in the process of the loan term sheet negotiations. So I'm going to mix both of the issues, the timeline and the negotiations together today. And I'm going to discuss the key dates that are included in a term sheet project finance loan agreement and the key dates that needs to be reflected in a financial model. Because as you know, a financial model is a contractual document. It is referenced in the term sheet and it's one of the most important documents when it comes to the project appraisal because it contains basically all the important information regarding the project, especially the commercial and of course the technicals as well. So today what we're going to do, we're going to discuss the different dates that are included in a term sheet and we're going to see how we need to apply them and include them in a financial model. Because when I started looking at the topic, I realized that there are so many dates. I mean, if you have a term sheet or you can download it online and if you just search for the keyword dates, you will see that there are a number of definitions that are referred to these dates, and there are a number of important dates that are mentioned in a term sheet. So it might be a long discussion, so there might be a part 2 to this discussion. So let's start with the part 1. Okay, just to summarize, this is basically the process and these are the important dates when it comes to the project finance deal. So first of all, we start with the signing. That's when you sign the agreement with different contractor, with the different parties like the lenders and the sponsors. So that's the signing date. When it comes to the loan agreement, so here our discussion is about loan. So first you sign the agreement with your lenders. Then you close the deal. So we're going to see later what are the differences between financial close, what's the definition of financial close, what's the definition of signing. After you close the deal, then you start the construction. You have some period of time which is called availability to draw down on debt until you finish the construction of the facility or your project, whatever is the project about. After that, you start operating, and there are some specific dates usually mentioned in the contract from operation date till the first repayment date. And then after that, you start repaying the debt, and then you have the final maturity of your debt, and then you continue with your project with or without debt, or you might refinance along the way. Okay, so today we're going to discuss some of these important dates and we're going to go into the detail in each one of them. However, before we get into the topic, for those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Hediye. I made financial modeling my profession as well as my passion. My aim in these videos are basically to make you a better financial modeler or just maybe better at financial modeling. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing. Okay, let's start with the signing date. What is the definition of a signing date? You might just say, okay, we know what is the signing date. It's the date when you sign the agreement. Yes, that's correct. That's the date when you sign the agreement. However, it's an important date because if you look into the definitions, many of the definitions refer to the signing date. For example, it might not always be the case, but in some cases, you should start paying commitment fees on the loan starting the signing date. Or some of the fees like the upfront fees or the appraisal fees might be due at this date, signing date. So that's why it's important to include this date in your model and link some of these fees that are actually linked to the signing date in your financial model. We're going to look at now an extract from a term sheet using the definition of signing date, and then we're going to look at how I use the signing date in my financial models. Okay, so as you can see, this is an extract from a term sheet. As you can see, the signing date It is mentioned as part of one of the definitions in the term sheet, and it basically says that the signing date means the date of signature of this agreement. As I said, it's not that simple. Many of the definitions are actually linked to the signing date. Now let's look at the financial model, and I will show you how I incorporate the signing date in my financial models. Okay, so this is a financial model. This is for a typical project finance model. So this is the input sheet. I'm going to go to the financing assumptions. Here you go. And for example, these are the terms of, I have two debt tranches in this model. So as you can see here, I have the signing date here. Just let me see, I have one mistake. Sorry. Okay, so as you can see here, I have reflected the signing date here as 31st of December 2021. And for example, I in this specific loan agreement, I had the project is supposed to pay the upfront fees 45 days after the signature date. So that's why I needed to reflect both of these the date and also the number of days in my financial model. And also the other thing was that the maturity was the countdown for the maturity also started from the signing date. So that's how I reflected the signature date in my financial model. However, as I said, this might be specific to your project, so you need to go and in the term sheet look for the definition of signing date and also then search for it, and you will see that in many instances, in many of the definitions, the signing date is linked to the definition of fees and how you should calculate the fees and the different basically commitments that the project has towards the lenders. Okay, the next date, important date, is the financial close date. That's the date when everybody celebrates and they open champagne and everything to celebrate the financial close date. Why is this such an important date? Because from this date going forward, you are allowed to draw down on the debt facility. When you sign, you still are not allowed to draw down. Once you reach financial close date, that's the date when you can go and ask for the lenders to give you, whatever sum of money that they committed in order to finance your project. Okay, so that's the important date that it's called financial close date. Okay. In the definition of financial closes, if you look at it in the term agreement, you will see that most of the time there are a lot of conditions, in order to reach that financial close. So they are specific to each project, but the most common ones are like, first of all, you should have signed the contract, the loan agreement. You should have signed all the agreement, the O&M agreement, the EPC. If you have any contractor to build a project for you, all these contracts need to be signed. And basically all the accounts, the different project accounts, they need to be established, and many other requirements that are specified in the term sheet in order to achieve the financial close date. Okay, it is also sometimes called effective date. So as I said, the terms that I mentioned here, they might be different in different loan agreements. Okay, they might not exactly be the same. I mean, they might be different in every project, but from the definition, you will understand that, okay, so this is the financial close date, the term that you're most familiar with. But as I said, they also call it an effective date. Okay, and what is important in terms of the financial model, this is the date at financial close, is the date when you freeze the base case model for the lenders and also for the sponsor from the ISAT, most probably. So they freeze the financial model. The financial model is audited at this stage because that the lenders will hire some consultants, some auditing firm to audit the model. So they audit the inputs, the model mechanic and everything. So it goes through different rounds of audit. And at this stage, at this effective date or the financial close date, your model is frozen. Okay, so it is also the version, the file name and everything, sometimes the number of cell and everything. There are different ways to lock the model. So you lock the base case model, and this is going to be basically the reference for the parties going forward for any updates or for any ratio calculations. Okay, so that's the important thing. Of course, there might be changes in the project cost going forward during the construction. So that's going to be considered as an increase in project, and then you have to tap into the contingency to fund if there are any cost increase. Okay, so that's why it's very important that once you reach the financial close, you know that you have no other choice than use the budget that you have defined in your financial model. Any increase from the budget, it's very difficult to go back to the lender and ask for more money once you reach financial close. Okay, so do you need to include that in your financial model? Yes, you should, and we're going to see how. But first, let's look at a typical an extract from a typical term sheet. Okay, so I'm not going to list all the requirements for a typical, because as I said, it's specific to each project, but the definition is basically saying that this is a date where you have to satisfy the different conditions specified in the loan agreements. Okay, and usually the conditions are so long that it can be just annexed to the document. It's going to be as an annex, the documents that needs to be provided and the requirements in a different annex, not in the body of the document itself. Okay, so now let's look at how we use it in a financial model. Let me go back and show you my model. So this is where I list all the timing assumptions. Okay, so I have this financial close date. As you can see, it's an important date and it's mentioned here, and I basically link it to the construction date. So financial close date on effective date is an important date because it's the date that you can start drawing down on debt. So your start of the construction is basically linked to this financial close date. Okay, the next definition is what they call technical completion date, or sometimes it's also called the physical completion date. That's the date which is most of the time it's scheduled 3 to 6 months post the commercial operation date that we just discussed. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that lenders would say 3 to 6 months after, it should be exactly 3 or 6 months, or sometimes 12 months, I don't know, it might differ. After the commercial operation date, the lenders require a detailed report from the sponsors, and they will ask them to tell them about the performance of the project, technical performance. They want to know if the project is operating as usual, as scheduled, if everything is going as normal in terms of technicality. So if it's a power plant, they want to know if the project is actually producing the number of megawatts, gigawatt hour that it was scheduled to produce. So they will require to have this basically important dates that they're going to sit down and they're going to look at the report and they're going to analyze the project to see whether everything is going well. Okay, so this is apart from the monthly detail, the quarterly, whatever detail, the reporting that they require. It's also an important day in terms of the technical performance of the project. Okay, and it is of course defined in the term sheet as well. So what they call the scheduled technical completion date, as I told you, it is most of the time 3 to 6 months post commercial operation date. And the commercial operation date, we just defined it. It's mainly a technical definition, which is referred to some technical agreements and contracts. Okay, so how do we reflect this in a financial model? To be honest with you, I never reflected this date in any of my financial model because, as I said, it's a technical detail. It's just to know that everything is going as scheduled. So I personally don't reflect it, and I don't see any reason of having it. Of course, if you want, you can put it in as part of the timing assumptions in your model. However, you need to put a note next to it that this is for information only. Okay, another important, and I think this is going to be the last one for this video, is the financial completion date. Okay, the financial completion date comes after the technical completion date that we just discussed. So the financial completion date is an important date, and as the name said, is financial. Okay, so as we said, the technical completion date was really referring to the technical performance of the project. The financial completion date refers to the financial performance of the project. So that's an important date where the lenders, they want to evaluate whether the project is going as scheduled when it comes to the financials. Okay, so at this date, when it comes to the financial model, they're going to have a rerun of the financial model with the revised assumption, if any, and they're going to recalculate the basically the ratios, and they want to make sure that everything is going as planned. Okay, so they're going to say that there's going to be lockups, the different requirements for the debt service cover ratio or the LLCRs, the loan life cover ratios, and they're going to basically evaluate the performance, the financial performance of the project. So the importance of this date is that most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, some of the sponsors' obligations in terms of the contingency provisions or in terms of any distribution to sponsors are basically locked until the financial completion is reached. Okay, so that's why the details of how you define the financial completion date is important, because most of the time prior to that you're not able to basically pay any shareholder loan or any dividends to the sponsors, or any of the sponsor supports like the contingencies that the lenders need to provide in order to give assurance to the lenders that the project has enough funds if things go wrong. They're going to lock it until the financial lenders will lock it until the financial close date, and after that they say you can release it, and if it's not spent, you can just basically release it as dividends or any payment to shareholders. Okay, as I'm telling you, so here I told you we talked about the technical completion date, financial completion date, commercial operation dates, all these definitions. As I told you, there might be these different definitions, but I have seen cases where there were just one completion date. So they were not many like technical, financial. It was all defined as completion date. So as I said, it differs from case to case, but I want you to be familiar if you see these terms in any of the loan agreements that you are dealing with. So here just an extract from a real loan contract. So financial completion date is the first date on which the following completion requirements have been achieved to the satisfaction of the lenders. And then, as I said, again, there is a long list of requirements that the project needs to satisfy in order to achieve this date, this milestone of financial completion date. Among these different requirements, one of the most common ones is, of course, there needs to be this financial date comes after the technical completion date. Most of the time also they will wait for the first repayment to be done, and then the financial close date maybe comes right after, or a couple of months or a couple of days after the first repayment date. And at that date, so as I said, they're going to monitor again all the ratios. As you know, the lenders will monitor the debt service cover ratio and loan life cover ratios throughout the life of the loan at the calculation dates. However, they will also do a rerun of the model and recalculation of the ratios at the financial completion date. Okay, and they want to make sure that the gearing, because that's, as I told you, that's when they're going to release all the support, the equity support and everything that the sponsors, the guarantee that the sponsors are giving to the project, they're going to be released at this date. So they're going to also do a rerun of the gearing to make sure that the gearing is basically at the maximum that they agreed with the lenders. So 75, 25, 80, 20, whatever has been agreed with the lenders and sponsor, they want to make sure that this is still the case. Okay. How do I reflect it in my financial models? So as I said, since there's going to be a rerun of the financial model at that stage, so most probably you don't need to do a separate calculation. It's just the ratios that you already have calculated in your financial model. That's going to be it. So you don't need to specifically put these dates in your financial model. If you want, as a suggestion, you can just maybe in your dashboard or in your summary sheet, you can report the debt service cover ratios, the LLCR, or different debt metrics at the financial completion date in your dashboard, just for demonstration purpose. Okay, so that's a good idea actually to do it. I never done it, but I think I will do it going forward. I think that's it for me now. I'm going to put a blog post as well on my website. You can read and go through the same topic. There are some of the definitions left, and I will try to cover it in my next video. In the meantime, if you have any suggestions or any comments, just leave a comment, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you. If you want to learn how to build better financial models, check out my online course on financial model spreadsheet design at courses.phoenixmode.com.